We've been talking about this net zero corridors, I suppose I said for the last 6 years, but in fact in 2009 I think it was that the City of Melbourne commissioned a report on this saying that corridors were a key part in addressing housing affordability and the viability of cities. And it's only now that we're starting to realise the importance of that resource. And a lot of what we're doing now is to try and leverage that information, but also the strategic asset management approach that government uses to look at what the value of these corridors are and how we can leverage that for housing affordability and better access and the health of our cities. When I walked along the corridors in Melbourne that had been transformed, it is very different to what was there before. Before it was dominated by traffic, the urban fabric was degraded. Once these corridors have been regenerated, you've got fabulous outcomes. It's in a human scale, it's not very high rise. You've still got the heritage values of these corridors because it recognises what's there before, but it gives people the accessibility, it makes it a good place. And so certainly we've been looking at, Parramatta Road. That was one of the projects that we looked at a long time ago. And that is ripe for redevelopment, that corridor. And now Transport for New South Wales and the New South Wales government is actually looking at what they can do there. But you'll see that as a great example of what it was like, closed shops, heavily traffic dominated, and to what you can see in Melbourne where these things have changed, or in other places where you turn them from that into a boulevard, into an active space with good quality public transport. The symposium was a wonderful event. It did bring people from around the world and from different disciplines together to start to think about what was possible. And although people were very interested in the trackless tram, what came out of it more was actually more of a focus on urban regeneration. People sort of took it for granted, yes, mid-tier transit can do this. What are the barriers to it? In order to overcome the barriers, the symposium came up with 3 things. And that was that you needed certainty, you needed courage, and partnerships. The certainty was provided by the planning frameworks. It was identifying a corridor and putting in place a framework that said this corridor is for urban regeneration and this is what you can do here, so that the developers who wanted to come along there, anyone who wanted to invest, the government entities that actually were responsible for it knew, everyone agreed that this is what they were doing. So it was like an improvement scheme along the whole corridor. You knew what you were going for. And then the last one, which was most important, was it needed to be collaborative. And that collaboration is really something that's been missing in a lot of projects, but we do see successes in this. We've seen successes in using alliances to deliver big projects, and this is something that is probably the next step in our urban regeneration processes. I think where an alliance contract is really the way to go, and this is probably why people were sort of seizing on this partnership model at the symposium, is it's complex. What an alliance project does is it absolutely helps with a really complex problem. And putting in a trackless tram or a net zero corridor is complex because you've got the energy, you've got the housing, you've got the roads, you've got the public transport, it's complex, you've got community, you've got social outcomes that you're wanting. You're wanting to bring all those things together. The only way that you can bring those things together efficiently and effectively is actually through an alliance.